Hello and welcome to the OKPreps Extra Show. I'm Patrick Prince, joined by Barry Lewis. It only took me 3 takes to get that part out, so now we're finally off and running. So Barry, last week I was telling you about Jerry Jones in Landman, his scene from the hospital room. You saw it. What did you think? Am I right? It was awesome, yes?
It was awesome, and basically he was speaking from the heart, from real life. So it wasn't too much of a stretch for him to play that part. But I think, as you have said, sometimes it could be hard to play yourself in a TV show or a movie. So good job by Jerry Jones. That was really great. A very moving scene, very impressive. Maybe it's the
Yeah,
best thing he's done in a while on
yeah.
in
I mean, we
anything.
see that all the time, people playing themselves on TV or in a movie. And it's not always playing yourself is not as easy as it might think because you see these performances and they seem kind of stiff or kind of forced, but he was legit. But well, the news of the day though is not his scene in Landman. Uh, News broke out this morning that the Dallas Cowboys have in fact parted ways or expected to part ways with Mike McCarthy. You're a Cowboys guy, Barry. Your thoughts on that move?
It's one that's, I think, shared by a lot of those who follow Dallas, the Dallas Cowboys, that there are mixed feelings because Mike McCarthy, very likable guy. And I think overall, he did a solid job over his 5 years as coach. For most franchises, that would be a really good run where the expectations aren't so high, especially when you've got a player personnel front office that's not very good at player personnel. So Mike McCarthy, I think, did a solid job overall. Very likable. Would have liked to. I was very impressed this year by how the team kept playing. They played hard for him the second half of the season when they had no shot to make the playoffs. That being said, I could have gone either way with them, with McCarthy staying with Dallas. Uh, I think that it's probably good in the long run for Dallas that Mike McCarthy does move on, and it's good for Mike McCarthy that he moves on. It would have been safe for him to come back for probably for both sides, but I think it's best for both parties because whether you're at the college, pro, or high school level, it's always a tough situation when you have a coach with a dark cloud hanging over his head entering into a season where the pressure is on so intensely, where if you get off to a slow start and you don't win a championship or get to a bowl game, win a Super Bowl, then you're there are questions about your job security and about whether you're going to get fired. That entered the season for Dallas this year with Mike McCarthy. It seemed like it for the last 5 years of Jason Garrett's tenure at Dallas. That was the case. It's really a dark cloud hovering over you. So there won't be that situation in Dallas next season because the new coach will get a fresh start. And for Mike McCarthy, I think he is valued. I could see, apparently, we don't know all the details why he's not being retained, but I think it came down to the length of the contract extension, where Dallas, understandably, because he hasn't gotten them to a conference championship game, didn't want to go as long term as Mike McCarthy wanted with his contract. And if you're Mike McCarthy, why should you go short term when apparently there are so many teams that really want you to be their head coach right now? He's a hot property, and they're going to be willing to give him 5 guaranteed years. So it makes sense for both parties to move on. It's interesting with Mike McCarthy that it seems like he is really admired and respected more from those outside of Green Bay and Dallas as far as his coaching ability than he is in Green Bay and Dallas. I mean, he seems like he's got a lot more critics in Green Bay and Dallas who are all over his case about his coaching philosophies, coaching style, coaching approach than he does in the rest of the league, where they pull up all the stats and it looks so great. All I heard was complaints about Dallas's offense, but when you're outside of Dallas, they'll pull up the stats and say, "Oh, Dallas really ranks high compared to the rest of the league over the last 5 years." And of course, a lot of that was the same true with Kellen Moore as well, who was the former Dallas offensive coordinator. How it seemed like Dallas, a lot of people inside who followed Dallas closely couldn't wait to get rid of him. And yet everyone outside of Dallas thinks he's like an offensive guru. I
Hmm.
think the answer is somewhere in between, as we've seen over the last couple of years, even though obviously he's on an Eagles staff and the Eagles aren't a great run, but are they on a great run this year because they've got a great offense?
Who do you want
Somewhat.
next?
Um, I don't, I think Dallas, the in order to win the championship, maybe they go, the only two coaches who've won Super Bowls for them have come from the college ranks. So in Jerry Jones, though, the safe approach would be to go from someone who's got NFL experience, a lot of NFL experience, and there's plenty of candidates to do that. And most of Jerry Jones's picks who've had that, I mean, the last 30 years, I mean, there have been a lot of winning seasons. They've usually been respectable. The coaching selections have been fairly good, would be considered good at most franchises. They just haven't got you to the conference championship game. I mean, Bill Parcells did some good things. Wade Phillips, Jason Garrett, Mike McCarthy, I think all did solid jobs. I think the last coach who really floundered there was someone who they promoted from within, Dave Campo, who was like 5-11 every year. So maybe if you're Jerry Jones, I think there's two ways you can go on this. The Jimmy Johnson proposal yesterday about trading coaches McCarthy for Mike Tomlin, at first you laughed. That makes a lot of sense. And so although a lot of people are talking about Mike McCarthy going to the Saints or Bears, why not do that trade? In a sense, do the trade, because Mike Tomlin, I think, is a really solid coach, but I think it's sort of a stale situation in Pittsburgh. So he might be rejuvenated and he might be a really good fit in Dallas. If you don't go with Mike Tomlin, and apparently because they can't talk to any coordinator who's still involved in the playoffs right now until after their season ends. So if you're thinking about Ben Johnson, the Cowboys couldn't talk to him until after the Super Bowl if Detroit plays in the Super Bowl. So why not go back to the college ranks? I could see Jerry Jones doing something, making some crazy hire from the college ranks, or flashy hire, whether it's trying to go after Dion, trying to make a run at Belichick, trying to make a run at Sark. But how about Lincoln Riley? That seems like that'd be so Jerry Jones. Go for Lincoln Riley, who what an escape that would be for him getting out of SoCal. So that nothing would surprise me. So don't forget about Lincoln Riley.
That that really that would leave me baffled. I mean, if this were a few years ago, I get it, but I don't know.
Well, that would leave me baffled too, but it'd be serious. So Jerry Jones like.
Fair. Well, we started the top of the show mentioning Landman, so let's stick with the TV theme for just a second. Did you see that they're going to do a reboot of Friday Night Lights? Were you a fan of that show back in the day, Barry?
Oh, I love the show. Love the show. I like the show better than the movie.
Okay.
The show, which was on for 5 seasons from 2006 through 2011, I thought captured even better than the movie. It maybe is because you need to have an extended run to do that. You couldn't just all catch it all in 2 hours, like what you have to do in a movie. I thought it amazed me because I mean, there are a lot of football movies I've liked, but in a lot of movies that have dealt with high school football, but none really captured the feel of high school football and high school communities as the Friday Night Lights TV series did. That's why I loved it. And yes, you had to do some things that seemed to me be a little bit over the top because it is an entertainment series, and it wasn't just trying to attract football fans. And of course, that's what I think made it successful. Was yes, it was about you had football involved in it, but it was more than football, and that's why it could attract the general audience. But I loved how it captured the feel of high school football. And besides having some really great actors in it too. And right now, I guess the reboot, which is going to be on Peacock,
Yeah.
it's going to the short description of it is it's going to follow a football team and community after a devastating hurricane, and they put together this ragtag team that makes a run at the Texas State football title. So it sort of reminds me of the last couple seasons of Friday Night Lights, the TV series, except now you've got a hurricane involved.
So you mentioned your favorite football movies. I don't think I know the answer to this. What is your favorite football movie if you had to pick one?
I think a movie, and I didn't really realize it at the time that it really captured high school football as well as it did. I knew it did, but it's All the Right Moves with Craig T. Nelson and Tom Cruise from 1983. That would be my favorite high school football movie.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And besides the action scenes were realistic, I thought as I've grown in the last 40 years, I've realized it's even more realistic than I thought it was at the time. So
Yeah.
That would be my number one. And of course, you got Brian's song, the original Brian song. That was, of course, that was so raw at the time because it came out only a year after Brian Piccolo died. And but what great acting, and it was a movie of the week instead of a theatrical release. But it'll still get you to cheer up, and maybe it's more effective in a way, even though some of it may seem hokey now to some people who weren't around back then. But I think it really holds up well overall. And I've heard that there's some people who want to do a redo of that, although a redo was already done back in around 2001, which it was okay, but it wasn't very effective to me. Yes, they could make the football, in a sense, some people may consider the football video they used in that more realistic, but it wasn't as effective as far as I'm concerned.
So they're talking about redoing it again?
Yes, again. I mean, just go with the original. You can't get better. And that's sort of like with the Friday Night Lights TV series reboot. That is sort of the danger to me. You can't get any better than what you did in those 5 seasons. So I know you're going to have more different characters for the most part in this reboot. And so I can see why you would want to do it. And you may bring back, there could be some characters, from what I've heard, could be some characters making some guest appearances, like Taylor Kitsch, who's played Riggins in the original series. He's apparently on board and willing to do a couple shows. That would be fun. But when you have like a masterpiece like the original Friday Night Lights was, it's always a concern, like, will the reboot spoil things at all? I don't think it really will. Just like the second Brian Song movie, just because it wasn't very good, it doesn't spoil the memories of the first one.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I'll look forward to it, and it'll be interesting to see what the reception of it is. The first Friday Night Lights TV series didn't get great ratings, but it was just so loved by the people who did watch it. That's the reason why it was on the air for 5 seasons. It was actually canceled after the second season from NBC, but then went off NBC for its final 3 seasons.
I didn't know that.
And it is weird because the second season, it was an abrupt ending because the second season was shortened because of a labor strike. Hollywood, I think that was a writer's strike back then. And so it was an unexpected end to the season, which they sort of had to, that was like the one year where you didn't wrap things up in a final game on screen. The season 3 started with them sort of telling you what happened, how season 2 ended.
So did you read Jimmy Trammel's Sunday story on the Sapulpa coaching murders from the 70s? I didn't. Some of that got by me, and then I read Jimmy's story and was reminded of just all that that story, all that that story contains.
Yes, that was quite an amazing true crime story. I was going to say, going back to the Friday Night Lights TV series, that even though they did some things that were sort of made you think, oh, that's a little over the top. Could that happen? For the most part, they didn't. One of the things that I thought at the time when I was watching it, it was in season 2, was when there was a killing involved in the show. Landry was involved in it. And at the time, I thought, oh, that's just so unbelievable. And then, though, looking back at it now, it is not unbelievable because you got a TV series called Murder Under the Friday Night Lights, a true crime docudrama series that's going to open its 4th season this week, Wednesday, 8 p.m. on the ID network, with the story that hits close to home because it occurred in Sapulpa. It's based in Sapulpa. Sapulpa, back in 1976, the Sapulpa head coach, Jerry Bailey, was killed by his assistant, Paul Rieger Jr. And that I remember when that happened. Back at the time it happened only like a few days after Super Bowl 10 between Pittsburgh and Dallas. And it was just so stunning. And still stunning looking back at it almost 50 years later. So I think for those who are not familiar with that, I think you would find it very interesting to tune in to that at 8 p.m. on Wednesday night on the ID network. The episode is actually called Will Get You. That's the 4th season opener. And apparently I'm not really that familiar. Well, I'll admit, I just became familiar with the series. I really never heard of this series until Jimmy's story the other day. That I guess all this is the 4th season in this series is built on murders involving football. It's just, but of course, it shouldn't. Maybe it's not as unbelievable as I would think it would be, because when I think back, I'm a big Dateline fan. Watch all the Datelines I can, and when I think back about it, yeah, they've had a few episodes over the years that have had revolved around football or had some type of relation to football. So why not just focus an entire series on that? So Murder Under the Friday Night Lights, and it's going to be based on that Sapulpa case from 1976, which is, it's one of those things. I was in high school back then. It's one of those things that's just like really haunting thinking back on it, because that and the Girl Scout murders a year later, just,
Yeah.
it's really sad to think about, but just one of those things you can't believe it happened.
Yeah. Wagner has a new coach. They hired Kimes-Gilbert from 2A Cushing. Of course, replacing a legend like Dale-Condict won't be an easy task. What do you think of that hire?
They hired him from Chisholm.
What did I say?
I think you said Cushing.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, I'm looking right at my notes and it says Chisholm. I don't thank you for correcting me.
Yes, interesting hire. It's sort of, he's got an interesting background. Before he got into coaching, he was a lineman at Southmore, so he's a Southmore graduate. And then he was part of the relaunch of football at Oklahoma Baptist. And that was back in 2013. So he's not very old. He's a young coach, about 30, I would guess. And he's in the Oklahoma Baptist Hall of Fame. So Athletic Hall of Fame. And even though they haven't played much football since, when they relaunched football in 2013, it was the first time they played football, I think, in over 70 years. But there's another member of the Oklahoma Baptist Hall of Fame who is well known for football that we know about. We know who that is, Patrick, who I'm referring to?
I don't.
Not in there for football, but he's probably better known now for football than he was for basketball. there, at least.
Tell me, I don't know.
Jenks athletic director and NFL referee Clay Martin.
No kidding. Didn't know
So
that.
Clay is in the OBU Hall of Fame. And of course, he played 2 years of college football at TU and then went to OBU and was successful there in the basketball court. And the rest is history.
Huh. How about
So
that?
anyway, getting back to Kimes-Gilbert, that he had a really outstanding football career at OBU, obviously, to get into their Hall of Fame 5 years after his last season there. Led the NAIA in sacks 1 year. And then off to a quick start in his coaching career, was on the staff at Choctaw, which had a lot of success when he was there. And he sort of got the Chisholm football program back going after a 1-9 season. They've been 6-5 the past 2 years. So he's got big shoes to fill, obviously, going into Wagner, where he succeeds dale-condict, who's a legend there. No other way to put it. He's a legend, and he's in the 20 years, Wagner's had tremendous success. So there's going to be some pressure, big shoes to fill. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. I was a little bit surprised, and this is not a criticism of the pick at all, the selection at all, that they didn't go for someone who's a bigger name or more established. But that was just me. I mean, I guess we're so used to all these coaching positions being filled by marquee names recently, these high-profile positions. Wagner went for a younger coach with not as big a resume. And we'll see how it goes there.
Yeah. All right, Barry, any announcements before we get out of here?
We'd like to invite all the coaches to send in. We're starting our Bill Knight Automotive Player of the Week selections for all the winter sports this week: basketball, wrestling, and swimming. So we encourage coaches to send in their nominations to me by 6 p.m. on Sundays. You can send them to me at barry.lewis@tulsaworld.com.
All right, we'll call that good for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Barry and I will be back next week.